Now confirmed that there was indeed a woman who was with the shooter in the footage that was captured by the houses nearby the area. And for whatever reason, the FBI has not yet released or even acknowledged that that footage exists.
We've all seen the headlines that claim to solve the tragedy of Charlie Kirk. But for millions, that official verdict was only the start of the questions. This is not a story about a random event. It's the chilling blueprint of a conspiracy, a final, desperate message encoded in a private journal, exposed by his own friend. The evidence suggests Charlie Kirk didn't just die. He was silenced, and the plot involved a convergence of forces, financial corruption, political betrayal, and a devastating fracture in his own marriage. The unraveling of Charlie Kirk began in silence, behind the closed door of a man who suddenly felt the air growing thin. The world saw him as the unshakable voice of a massive movement, a man who debated with absolute certainty. But Candace Owens claimed she saw the private, final moments of his undoing, pages filled with the terror so cold it froze the blood. She didn't just leak the secrets, she shouted them, shattering the image of a leader and revealing a victim. According to Candace, those last entries detailed a profound psychological collapse that was far beyond mere stress. Charlie wrote of an unbearable unease, describing the walls of his own home as literally closing in on him, the feeling of a spectral presence that was watching and calculating his every move. This was the crushing dread of a man who realized his life was a cage, constructed by the very people he trusted implicitly. The implication was immediate, devastating, and directed squarely at his wife, Erica Kirk. The power couple, the symbol of loyal partnership, was, in private, fracturing into two terrifyingly isolated individuals. Candace's move to publicize this was an act of profound violation. Yet, to her followers, it was necessary to explain the impossible. She confirmed those harrowing words were penned just days before the tragic event, suggesting the threat wasn't theoretical, it was imminent, and it was deeply intimate. His sanctuary was compromised. His life was an open secret to his betrayers. This wasn't just marital strife. This was the first meticulous layer of a high-stakes plot designed to isolate him psychologically before moving to eliminate him physically. The internal collapse was detailed further in his own hand. Charlie chronicled a pervasive sense of being systematically excluded from his own life and work. He wrote of important conversations happening around him, critical decisions being made, and a gradual, terrifying realization that he was not invited, not informed, and not consulted. He was the founder, the figurehead, yet he felt deliberately sidelined, pushed to the periphery of his own domain. This exclusion wasn't accidental distance. It felt like a premeditated act of sabotage designed to weaken his authority. He was being treated like a figurehead, not a leader, and this realization was driving him to the brink. The agony culminated in a single gut-punching line that Candace read, a confession of total vulnerability. "I still love her, but I don't know if she'll be there for me." That line defined a tragedy. It wasn't simple, it was despair and raw confusion, the ultimate confession of a man clinging to the final thread of hope, while the reality of abandonment, or worse, closed in. His trust, which was his greatest asset, was the first thing they killed. This emotional evidence formed the core of the personal betrayal theory, suggesting his closest partner may have been involved in securing the perfect window for a takeover. This personal collapse was directly tied to the cold calculus of money and influence. The conspiracy narrative highlights that Charlie's final days were marked by an unrelenting pressure from powerful donors who demanded he align his platform with specific, non-negotiable foreign policy stances. He was pressured to cancel commentators who were critical of certain established political interests. The price of his integrity was catastrophic, the loss of a major $2 million annual donor. The messages shared painted a picture of a leader forced to choose between his movement's financial survival and his own ideological conscience. He chose integrity, and that choice, the theory suggests, sealed his financial fate, turning him into a liability who could no longer be controlled by money. This financial siege, combined with the personal isolation, left him completely exposed. The massive loss of the $2 million donor meant Charlie could no longer afford to overlook internal issues. He was forced to turn inward, leading to the discovery of the most fatal piece of evidence, the internal audit. Candace claimed the donor crisis forced them to suspect deeper financial corruption, leading them to initiate a full review to uncover hidden spending and secret dealings that implicated their executive staff. This was a direct existential threat to the powerful people who ran the organization day to day. The stakes were no longer political, they were criminal. The evidence suggests that the conspiracy moved from passive betrayal to active elimination the moment Charlie took professional action. The stakes became mortal when Charlie allegedly signed the official audit request just days before the tragic incident. This single bureaucratic act, Candace argues, changed his status from a troubled leader to a direct, imminent threat. The evidence suggests that the conspiracy moved from passive betrayal to active elimination the moment Charlie took professional action. The stakes became mortal when Charlie allegedly signed the official audit request just days before the tragic incident. This single bureaucratic act, Candace argues, changed his status from a troubled leader to a direct, imminent threat. Financial exposure had an absolute deadline. Eliminate Charlie before the auditors could penetrate the secret accounts. This deadly awareness fueled Charlie's final, desperate actions. His intense paranoia was, in this narrative, entirely justified. His behavior in the final days, double-checking his emails, demanding to know precisely who had access to his secure files, his hours of intense silent rumination, was the meticulous, terrified action of a man who knew he was on to something enormous and was currently being hunted. He was no longer a political activist. He was an informant about to be silenced. The conspiracy hardened. The theory suggests that the organizational leaders facing ruin realized that the domestic situation, Erica's exclusion or suspected betrayal, provided the perfect access point. The internal plotters needed only to ensure the audit was stopped, the files were destroyed, and the public narrative was controlled. The aftermath, the disappearing files, the hushed conversations, and the immediate secrecy within the organization were not signs of grief, but the telltale evidence of an active, internal cover-up designed to erase the audit trail. The man who sought financial transparency had his life cut short by the very secrets he tried to expose.
I just want to say that I feel like at the beginning of this investigation, I was very clear. I said there will be no fakeness and there will be no gayness in this investigation. And apparently there were some people who did not take me seriously or literally, because there are a lot of little lies being told, right? Charlie gets assassinated, and the very people who were threatening him, emotionally and financially, are now trying to memorialize him.
The professional execution of the plot required a clean external appearance, and the official narrative, according to the claims, was a deliberate fabrication. The first voice to raise the alarm wasn't a politician, but Joe Rogan, whose status as an unbiased, powerful observer gave immediate weight to the doubt. Rogan calmly stated that the official story didn't quite line up, pointing to the disturbing speed with which the case was wrapped up by authorities. His gut feeling that something was missing resonated across the country, turning the investigation into an open public query. Rogan's analysis focused on the visual anomalies of the official suspect, whose arrest was supposed to close the book on the case. He described the suspect's photos as feeling too staged, too clean, like a scene that had been manufactured rather than captured by chance. He pointed to small, specific inconsistencies in the imagery, concluding that the entire story sounded like a movie script that got rewritten halfway through. The neatness of the official closure, Rogan argued, was precisely the evidence of the cover-up, a hurried effort to sanitize the narrative and distract from a far messier reality involving the organization's powerful figures. The most chilling claim in the external plot was the emergence of the decoy figure. Rogan hinted at the presence of an older, familiar operative, rumored to have surfaced at multiple major national incidents over decades, a signature pattern of orchestrated chaos. The conspiracy theory exploded when this same shadow figure was reportedly seen agitating and drawing attention away from the scene immediately after the event. This decoy was a deliberate diversion, the theory suggests, allowing the true perpetrators to escape and the internal plotters to secure the organization without interference. This was validated when Candace Owens claimed Charlie's own notes mentioned a mysterious figure intentionally planted to mislead people. This hard-find connection suggested Charlie had figured out the decoy plot himself. He realized he was not just facing a lone shooter, but a coordinated professional external operation. A specialized team brought in to ensure the truth remained buried, while the internal plotters, the people who signed the checks and ran the organization, secured their victory. The decoy plot proved that Charlie was accurate in his fear that he was being targeted and watched, making his final diary entries a tragically precise piece of investigative journalism. The implication is that the official suspect, despite the prosecutor's claims of a note and text proving guilt, was merely the final, disposable component of a sophisticated external maneuver, ensuring that the trail of breadcrumbs stopped cleanly at a lone actor and never led back to the doors of the organization or its powerful financial backers. The media's quick acceptance of the official story was, in this view, a final act of successful manipulation. The conspiracy reached its ruthless climax in the days immediately following the tragedy, focusing on the calculated actions of Erica Kirk. The most powerful piece of circumstantial evidence was the suspicious speed and smoothness of her ascent to the leadership position at the organization. Just days after Charlie's death, the grieving widow was back in front of the cameras, acting as the spiritual successor. The rapid pivots fueled the theory that this transition was not a spontaneous reaction to tragedy, but the activation of a succession plan that had been long prepared. Candace Owens brought the diary's personal accusations full circle, claiming Charlie's final entries detailed his concern that major decisions were being made without him, precisely aligning with key meetings that Erica allegedly attended alone. This strengthened the theory that the domestic betrayal was a functional organizational plot to strip him of his authority before his removal. The organization's loyalty was swiftly transferred, not to Charlie's memory, but to the new authority. Candace delivered the final, devastating sentence that cemented the betrayal. Sometimes the people closest to you aren't standing by your side, they're standing behind you. This became the conspiracy's ultimate summation, suggesting the external enemies and the financial plotters were only successful because the betrayal came from the inside, from the person who had intimate access to his home and his organizational power. The final victory of the plot was not the death of Charlie Kirk, but the seizure of his life's work by the very people who stood to gain the most from his silence. The aftermath solidified the fear. Internal files vanished. Meetings were held behind closed doors, and the organization's swift transition was deemed too perfect to be accidental. The man who challenged political dogma and financial secrets was silenced, and the people who were supposed to be his allies now controlled his massive legacy. The final words in his diary, that cry of abandonment and fear, became the haunting clue left behind, an ink-stained premonition that the forces moving around him were not random, but part of a perfectly arranged, deadly chain of events that left his life's work in the hands of his supposed betrayers.
Yeah, I watched my friend get shot in the neck. Yeah, that's what happened. I just want to say that he was publicly executed again before the world. The question is why?
This complex, multi-layered narrative suggests that the death of Charlie Kirk was the result of a coordinated operation where the personal, financial, and political threats converged into a single fatal plot. The diary serves as the internal evidence of the motive, the audit is the professional trigger, and the decoy quick verdict is the external mechanism of the cover-up. The question remains, was Charlie Kirk the victim of a random act, or was he assassinated by a conspiracy that connected financial greed, political maneuvering, and the ultimate, intimate betrayal? The only evidence left is the fear written in his diary, a terrifying final warning from a man who knew his time was up.